This is Jerome Corsi, and today is Wednesday. It's July 5th, 2023. Hope everybody had a great 4th of July, and I'm thrilled we're still celebrating independence. Let's hope we can continue to do it for a long time. Today I want to jump right into some stories that I think have been developing that are important. The first one, it's pretty clear right now that Biden weaponizing the dollar against Russia has backfired. You can see that the sanctions and everything that we put economically were actually buttressed by trying to block Russia from using SWIFT and other methods of payment to essentially block Russia out of a lot of international trade. Now, the whole idea there was that we were saying we're the currency of international world's reserve currency, the one used in international trade. And this move was really challenging the Bretton Woods Agreement after World War II. It was made actually towards the close of World War II, that we would use our currency, the dollar, in order to reestablish international trade so countries could go into the dollar and then change goods and come out of the dollar into the local currencies. What now is happening is that we are seeing that countries like Russia are reacting. Russia last year demanded payment for its oil and natural gas in rubles, and Russia started moving towards backing the ruble with gold. This is a direct challenge to the United States' position as the world's reserve currency. Now, today, with the BRIC nations, we're going to cover this in a minute, meeting and really taking a greater stand, that Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they're going to be meeting in Johannesburg. They're having the preliminary meetings right now. They're talking about de-dollarizing the global economy. That's on the agenda. And that's not going to happen immediately, but with the central bank digital currencies and all the other changes, the whole U.S. Treasury and SWIFT system is a system in which the money is exchanged electronically, still goes into the dollar and out of the dollar. This is going to change dramatically because blockchain technologies, digital currencies, cloud-based financial infrastructures, cryptocurrencies like XRP that are all this ISO standard, it's a whole standard way of dealing. You can go into XRP, you don't have to go into the dollar, just buy XRP, send the XRP, and when it gets to the other end of the other country, it's going to have the same value as the XRP, just goes right into that country's currency. You don't have to go into the dollar. It takes longer, and there is losses in the currency exchanges. Now, in other words, if you don't time it right, values change. It's an old-fashioned way of doing international trade, given the modern technology. And with these BRIC nations forming together, they're going to present a dramatic challenge to the United States. Now, if we get to the next stories, and I want to continue covering this BRIC issue, because the BRIC nations are looking to have 5 additional countries join in August when they have their meeting. Now, I think they can only take 5. I think 25 countries have formally sent their applications, but the countries that are going to get accepted look like they are Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Egypt, and Indonesia. Now, that's important because, first of all, you've got Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt, and they're all Middle Eastern countries, and they're all part of OPEC. So you're getting here with OPEC and the BRICS are coming together in a fundamental way, because the OPEC Plus now includes Russia. And this is a formation of nations that are going to be representing about 40 to 50% of the world's population pretty soon, and 25 to 30% of the world's economy. And that's going to grow. This is going to be a especially if they de-dollarize. This alliance will gain in GDP, in their purchasing power parity, and Saudi Arabia is in addition to the group, they could fund, which is this new development bank, which they're talking about. And these would be ways to bypass the sanctions on Russia and to generate loans to countries, bypass the World Bank, and create their own alternative to the dollar economy, which will challenge U.S. supremacy, and it will be a de-dollarization move. Now, in the next article, we're asking the question, what difference does this make? And the difference that it makes is pretty dramatic, because if you take a look at the U.S. financial sectors that are going to be affected if the BRICS decide to launch their own currency, we could have our impact on banking and finance in the United States, oil and gas, which we've taken a lead in, commodity trading, production and consumption, technology, tourism, the foreign exchange market, and international trade. All these sectors are closely linked to the dollar, and any shift in the geopolitical dynamics could shake up these industries. Moreover, if banking and financing take a hit, the shock could spill over into the commodities market. Similarly, the domino effect could fall on the foreign exchange and international trade, making the U.S. dollar difficult to balance its status. So a decline in the U.S. dollar will cause a reduction in production and consumption in the United States. If the BRICS currency is used to settle the oil and gas trade, the U.S. dollar will be hit dramatically. So the fate of the dollar right now is going to be affected by the formation of this essentially anti-American group, and it's going to be led by China and Russia, but it has a membership expanding into OPEC. I think Iran will eventually be a member of this group, and you will have a very strong coalition that wants to present a challenge to the U.S. dollar. One of the reasons the United States has enjoyed prosperity since World War II has been not only we came out of World War II unaffected by the war, there was no war damage in the United States, we weren't attacked, but beyond that, we had a very strong economy, building what Franklin Roosevelt called the arsenal of democracy. We produced the tanks, the weapons, the airplanes, etc., essentially getting us out of the Depression. So we're again seeing a challenge that is developing because the United States is intentionally deconstructing its economy. This woke culture, which is neo-Marxism, is designed to make us take changes, take policy decisions which weaken the United States. And I'll get to that in a minute, but first let's concentrate on this growing threat economically to the country. And Chris, do you want to comment on this?
It is a major threat to the U.S. economy. What they're trying to do at this point, what it looks like is going to happen, is there's going to be there's no longer a first world, second world, and third world, but there's going to be a kind of a separate bunch of different worlds put together where we have trade blocs that are trying to out-trade each other, out-produce each other, and work on a certain level of global supremacy as it moves on toward the future. Of course, the people who are sitting at the World Economic Forum are watching all the nations fight against themselves and using that, of course, to take power on their own. There's a lot to look at behind all this, but we also look at this. Our country, our nation, the structure, the infrastructure of it, the political leadership has basically been less than stellar. Dollar's going down for a lot of reasons, and the West has been trying to weaken itself. So these BRICS nations, who aren't generally the West, decided, I want to keep a stronger economy. We, just like a lot of Americans, don't want the World Economic Forum to take us over. So we're going to not only take down the West, but we're going to be much stronger as a union ourselves. That's what I see happening. I don't think I'm far off, but if I am, tell me.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, the issue is we're becoming a multipolar world. And the initial post-war configuration was the United States versus Russia. And China did not emerge as a major power until very recently. It was Richard Nixon who in the 70s went over and opened China with Kissinger, which was a major way to get China into world trade, and China's taken full advantage of it. Now, for a while, it seemed like it could have a configuration of the United States, Russia, China, but the emergence of these BRIC nations show that you've got a combination of Russia and China embracing the developing world and the Middle East oil-producing countries and trying to raise them up economically. The only countries that are not being included in this party are Africa and South America. And this is, again, they're going to be the third world, the undeveloped world. And Africa has a lot of these minerals which will be exploited, which we need for this climate change nonsense. But the point is, the economics of the United States are intentionally being weakened by policies which are destructive. And they include the global warming policies. We have, and I've been pointing this out and arguing it, doing a lot of media again, did a show this weekend, which was in South Africa, but it goes on the TNT network all across the country, pointing out how this whole global warming movement is not based on good science. And of course, that's what I've been saying here. And, the first book in this trilogy, which is the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. And what it is the exposing the climate lies in this age of disinformation. So going to wind and solar are very expensive. We spent billions of dollars. Technologies don't work. And right now we're going to be facing limitations in the precious metals needed to make solar panels or batteries for EVs. The technology, the grid is not there to absorb all this so-called renewable fuel. And yet the pressures are there enormously. Politically correctness. You can't, every place I read, it's constantly, everything is getting blamed on climate change. I mean, if I just pull up a couple of emails here, I follow this every day on the Google, just what are the articles on climate change and the like. And I'm going to find a couple here and just point out everything is related to climate change right now. What they are saying, let me get it here. Just take a second. There we go.
I'll throw this point in. These BRICS nations are probably thinking the same thing that we're thinking. This whole blaming everything on climate change is ridiculous and a detriment to a nation's economy.
Yeah, it is. And they know it. I mean, here, okay. So here's global warming. UK's record June heat bears fingerprints of climate change. It's called summer. And by the way, the sun is in a solar maximum right now in sun cycle number 25. Okay, let's talk food. This is from West Hawaii today. Foods that are affected by global warming. Okay, so world's record land, sea temperatures as climate change fuels 2023 extremes. That's in the Hindustan Times worldwide. This is in the Anadolu Agency. Global warming to step up annual food inflation by 3%, 2-3% by 2035. Science Daily. 3 things to know. Climate change impact on extreme weather events. National Geographic. Earth's shifting magnetic poles don't cause climate change. Nothing except carbon dioxide. Jerusalem Post. World hits record land sea temperatures as climate change fuels 2023. No, it was actually warmer in 1936. That was the time when we had much warmer weather globally, and that can be documented in the historical record. Salon.com. White House flows research on blocking sun's rays. You want to block the sun's rays. Now that's really smart. Blocking
Salon.
the sun's rays.
Salon's the opposite of salon. So, I mean, I read some of their stuff. It's the exact opposite of what a salon really is.
Yeah, there's no real open discussion over there. It's all one point of view.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue here with the articles today, because I think this next one is another one I want people to understand. This was someone did a chart visualizing the gold price and U.S. debt. Okay, now this has been central to my book, and I'm going to show the book first here, right here, while Chris gets the visual up. There's the book. The book is on the coming global crash, and will create a historic gold rush. I did it with Dean Heskin, who is the president and CEO, who co-authored this, of Swiss America, one of our sponsors. Chris, you want to show the book on this chart on the screen if you can? There we go. What this chart shows, and it's dramatic, and the book explains this. If you see 1970s, when we had the OPEC crisis and we had Jimmy Carter, we went into a very severe economic recession in 1970s. Was pulled out of it by Paul Volcker coming in with the Federal Reserve. We had interest rates that were up in the 20% in the early 1980s, and gold took its first big leap. It went from $35 an ounce when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. It went up to $843 an ounce under Ronald Reagan when he was elected president and Volcker was running the Federal Reserve. We had relatively stable debt through 2000, although it was beginning to increase. But the steep increase in debt, this is the U.S. national debt, started about after 2000, after 9/11. We began spending tremendously and going through these foreign wars in the Middle East. And again, we suffered in 2008 and 2009, the subprime real estate crisis. It crashed. And then the derivatives crashed as the mortgage-backed securities crashed. It's a domino effect. They're beginning to call today a doom loop, where one event cascades and hits another event. So you've got the fact that subprime borrowers who really didn't qualify for homes got these mortgages. When interest rates went up, they couldn't pay the monthly mortgage interest rate debt. And so they foreclosed on the houses. Those houses were packaged into mortgage-backed securities and sold on Wall Street, held by many institutions, including the banks, the Federal Reserve, as assets. When the mortgages failed, the assets failed. When the assets failed, the derivatives failed. These derivatives are bets, hedging, whether the markets are going up or down. They're very complicated, and there's trillions of dollars of derivatives. And that's what closed Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns. We had a banking collapse. And of course, gold hit another peak. So gold essentially then leveled off after it hit the peak. And with the pandemic, gold again rose to its high, March 8th, 2022, of $2,074. But in 2010, so it went in 1980, $843 an ounce. 2010 was $1,426 an ounce. And in March 8th, 2022, gold was $2,074.60. Our national debt now is at $33 trillion, and we're going to have another major crash because commercial real estate is largely vacant in the cities, 30 to 40% vacant. When these buildings have to refinance, and there'll be about $1.5 trillion of them refinancing in the next 18 months or so, they're going to, many of them, foreclose. The cities are becoming democratic hellholes. You're seeing the San Francisco is probably the best case of this, or the worst case of it, with homelessness, etc., in the streets, filth, drugs, insanity, literally psychosis amongst many of these people, mentally ill. It's not safe. You had the Hilton Hotel just walk away from its debt in Union Square. You've had major businesses shut their doors. Nordstrom's has closed one of its flagship operations. And San Francisco is going to suffer now tax losses that are significant. Downtown is not safe. And this is going to happen in cities across the country. Chicago is a good victim here. Chicago is going to go the same way. Cleveland, many of these cities, Philadelphia, are all potential negatives and losses. Now, when this happens, what I'm telling you, and Chris, we're going to take a minute and show the Swiss America the offer of this Walking Liberty $50. I'm strongly encouraging you now to get your money out of the stock market. Stock market is going to look like it's doing well because we're pumping all this money, all this liquidity in. But liquidity is not the nation's cash, how much cash there is in the economy. As businesses are shutting down, we're finding that we are actually having a contraction of the money supply. Money supply is contracting right now at a faster rate than it has since the Depression. The stock market could lose 10,000 points in a day. And I'm warning you of this because it's going to happen. We'll have a major stock market crash. And if you've got your retirement savings, your 401ks, your IRAs in mutual funds, are likely to be in these funds that are invested in the stock market. Again, you're going to suffer major losses unless you start thinking about it. Get some gold and silver. In Swiss America, this offer, Walking Liberty $50. They're very high content silver. They don't cost very much. You can get up to 250 of them for virtually what they're worth in the price of silver. You can own some precious metal and then start consulting with how you can go deeper into this. You don't have to have thousands and thousands of dollars to start. And if your IRAs and 401ks, you want to get safe, the people who get out in a crash first are the only ones who survive. Otherwise, you have to hold on and wait for the market to come back, and it may take it years to come back. Let's move on. Two stories that I'm following closely here. This one particularly concerned me, where you have Iran and Russia getting closer together. And they're developing a plan which is to expel the United States from Syria, which may include Russia's intent to facilitate Iranian-backed attacks on U.S. forces in Syria. Now, our presence in Syria blocks Iran having a land bridge over to Lebanon and to the Eastern Mediterranean. It checks Iran's expansion dreams of exporting their revolution. From Lebanon, you can attack northern Israel. From Damascus is where the Golan Heights are. There was a war attacking into the Golan Heights in the 70s. Iran controls already Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen, and it's broadening its influence even in Latin America. Our dramatic drawdown of troops, catastrophic pullout of Afghanistan by Biden, have left our troops in Syria, blocking Bashar Assad, who is the president of Syria. But it's a weak position now. And you'll see here the rise again of various terrorist forces supported by Iran, including probably ISIS, because we are abandoning the Kurds to Turkey, Iran, and ISIS in this region of the world. So if we withdrew from Syria, it would imperil the sovereignty of Iraq, Syria, as well as the nation, the hopes of the Kurdish people to form their own nation. You're going to reinforce the most negative forces in Iran, which is already working with Russia to supply drones in the Ukraine war. And I think it's going to be only a matter of time until Biden caves in and another agreement is formed with Iran, allowing Iran to continue on to nuclear weapons. Iran is very close to being able to test nuclear weapons. We have Russia, which has moved nuclear weapons into Belarus. And I see all dangers intensifying of a nuclear war. what I'm concerned about is we're doing a cycle that is a repeat cycle. In the 1920s, we had the Roaring Twenties, which was a big drunken party after World War I. Those who survived celebrated in the speakeasies, despite prohibition. So you have a boom, which we've had a good economy since about 2013 up until the pandemic. Certainly Donald Trump's economy was very strong. And then we have a crash. 1929, the stock market crashed. I'm anticipating another market crash. I think we're going to have a very rough September and October this year. And then from the crash, we go into a depression, which lasted through the 1930s. It's going to take a long time for this economy to recover. They combine the global warming maniacs who say, we've got to block the sun, you can't eat meat, you should only have 3 new pairs of clothes bought a year, you shouldn't be driving gas cars, they want to reduce the standard of living, and they want to make energy more expensive. Well, that's going to be an inflationary pressure that will be detrimental to business. Right now, Germany is already in recession, and Germany is deindustrializing because the cost of energy is excessive, and Germany has shut down its nuclear power plants. That's economic suicide. It's intentional. It's a mass phenomenon that is a craze, this idea that carbon dioxide, which is a trace molecule in the atmosphere, is the knob that turns the temperature of the earth. The sun heats the earth. When the sun goes through a minimum, like it did in the Maunder minimum, we have a little ice age. When the sun burns more intensely, like it's doing right now, it gets warmer. Milankovitch cycles, when we get further out in our elliptical orbit, about every 100,000 years, we're the farthest from the sun in this elliptical orbit, we have an ice age. Carbon dioxide is not carbon dioxide follows warming. It doesn't cause global warming. And, again, this whole movement is suicidal. We've got to get rid of cows because they fart and they let out methane. That's a greenhouse gas. Well, we exhale carbon dioxide. And these people would just as soon say, well, we have too many people. So next they'll be wanting to eliminate people. And the economics that result from this are degrowth, and they are neo-Marxist. I'll pull a book here and show you in a minute where the Marxists are saying they want degrowth capitalism, which means they want to shut down the industrial engine that has fueled the world's prosperity since the end of World War II. We should be sharing this prosperity with the third world rather than robbing the third world of its natural minerals in order to fuel this insane idea of using only electrical. We're still going to have to use hydrocarbons to produce the electricity or to mine the precious metals for the batteries. It's absolutely insanity. Combine that with the debt structure that we've got right now, and this is not sustainable. The Federal Reserve has $8 trillion in treasury notes. We buy our own debt and agency notes like mortgage-backed securities. When those depreciate, and they are depreciating already, many of these were issued in the zero interest rates maintained by the Federal Reserve for Obama to stimulate economic growth. Your assets are going to be depreciating, and the banks will not have the asset liability ratios they need to continue operating. The only way we can solve this problem now is with printing more money, which will be inflationary. So we're in a desperate situation with this, and internationally, we're being pressured with Iran. The Biden administration will undoubtedly make another suicidal agreement, allowing Iran to get back into the oil business, allowing Iran to get out from the sanctions, and allowing Iran to develop nuclear weapons. This has been a John Kerry dream of Iran since I first opposed him in 2004. I've written 3 books on atomic Iran. They've been hard to get everybody's attention on. But as we get a nuclear war developing in the Middle East, I think people will finally pay more attention to it. At least I hope so before it's too late. At any rate, I have not been in favor of all the wars we've done in the Middle East. I think we've gone way too long and premised all on many lies. You know, the weapons of mass destruction that were not found with Saddam Hussein. Go on and on. But the point is, the Middle East is going to be much less stable. It'll be much more unstable. Donald Trump had these various countries agreeing to work with Israel and develop the region. The countries entering into a pact where they agreed to accept the sovereignty of Israel. Now we're going to see Israel's sovereignty challenged again. Israel launched its largest raid into the West Bank since 2002. The threat against Israel is intensifying. Last story I want to cover today is also, I think, all these stories are very important, but just let me get to it here on the homepage. But over the weekend, a judge, federal judge, so this is the story on the First Amendment, federal judge in Louisiana has forbidden multiple federal agencies and named officials from having any contact with social media companies with the intent to moderate content. This was a preliminary injunction, and the suit was filed by the states of Missouri and Louisiana, along with individuals, include 2 leading critics of the COVID-19 lockdown regime, Harvard's Martin Kulldorff, Stanford, and Jim Hoft with the Gateway Pundit. It's a major victory because if the allegations made by the plaintiffs are true, the judge said, this is U.S. District Judge Terry Doughty, the present case arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in the United States history. The plaintiffs are likely to succeed on the merits in establishing that the government used its power to silence the opposition. Dozens of agencies bound by the injunction include President Biden himself, White House press secretaries, Food and Drug Administration, Center for Disease Control, Treasury Department, State Department, U.S. Election Assistance Commission, the FBI, the entire Department of Justice, Department of Health and Human Services. What they are being banned from, Doughty cited communications where the Biden White House was sending, and the White House was sending during the pandemic, even under Trump, these agencies were active in trying to censor, where emails were being received by the social media company, quote, cannot stress the extent to which this needs to be resolved immediately. Please remove this account immediately to Facebook. Are you guys serious? I want an answer on what happened here, and I want it today. Hey, folks, wanted to flag the tweet below and wondering if we can get on moving on with the process of having it removed ASAP. The judge said that the badgering came simultaneously with threats of changing the social media regulatory scheme unless the social media responded to the government's demands to censor. Many emails between the White House and social media companies refer to themselves as partners. The judge said, Dougherty said, if there's a bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment, it is the government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds itself the idea offensive or disagreeable. And of course, the New York Times came out and said this decision challenges our ability to fight disinformation. Well, the left wants to characterize truth as disinformation. And that's why I'm writing books on the truth about energy. There's the truth about energy. It's real climate science, not gobbledygook. If the public were educated in mathematics, physics, chemistry, you couldn't get away with this nonsense of climate change. Be laughed at. That's why this show is called The Truth Central. The truth is what's needed to solve this problem. And the censorship does not let us get the truth out. We have to fight it anyway. And I salute Jim Hoff for this victory. Chris, any final comments as we wrap up?
Yeah, it's funny that the New York Times is is complaining about people on the internet spreading disinformation since, as you know, for over or about a century, they've been doing the same thing.
Well, it's an age in which, the truth is called disinformation, and it's a very desperate time we're in. Let's wrap it up. I said this, Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Wednesday, July 5th, 2023. The end, God always wins. God will win here too. Sometimes I fear to think of what the cost may be of God winning. So I implore everybody in the spirit of 2 Corinthians 7:14, we have all got to, myself included, get down on our knees and ask God's repentance for the nation, that we allowed God to be taken out of the schools, out of the public square, that we allowed Roe v. Wade, children to be killed in the womb. We've committed a lot of sins against God. And when I see the churches flying the pride flag, I'm wondering what kind of insanity has gotten into people. There's always been a certain amount of gender difference or gender uncertainty, but it's always been a very small percentage of the population until God is banned and the pagan gods return, and we begin worshiping hermaphrodites, and we become Babylon. It can be prevented, and God will only tolerate it for so long. Let's implore God to intervene now to end this nonsense without the most severe consequences we might otherwise face. We should do this because we need to stand by the truth, and we need to stand by God in order to turn back this evil, which is on its ascendancy right now throughout the world. Dr. Jerome Corsi will be back tomorrow. Thank you for joining us on The Truth Central. We're doing podcasts every weekday. God bless.